Good morning, friends. Nice to see you here. Nice to be back for a week of morning practice together. It's been a while. I think it was just before Christmas. I wasn't here in January. So nice to just see your names appearing and to settle in for a little bit of practice together, reflections, meditation. Oof. Woo! I don't know where all that came from, but not finished, I think. I'll turn my mic down. Wow, that was a lot. Sneezing. Um, okay. Hold on, still up. Give me a minute. Oh, I feel I've got a sneeze right there, and it just won't come. I'm sorry, I can't speak until this has just moved through a little bit. All right. It's right there, but it's not coming. All right. Oh, every time I think I can start speaking, I feel like I'm about to sneeze again. Okay, here we are. Welcome. We decided at Sangha Live to give a theme to this whole month, and we thought we might do that not every month, but every now and then, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, have a themed month. And I think this month the theme is fear and fearlessness, fear and beyond fear, and pointing to that promise of Dharma teaching of living without fear. You might just sort of just let that in a little bit. What? Maybe you have some taste of living without fear. Maybe that's kind of deeply inspiring, that idea, living without fear, free from fear, fearless. Maybe it seems far away, distant, impossible even. If we're talking about living without fear, it's not the absence of the sort of biological survival mechanism that might be there. You know, if you suddenly come across a snake on the path, if you step out into the road and are nearly hit by a vehicle, you know, if there's some sense of imminent physical danger presents itself, there's an adrenalized shock response that galvanizes us, it sharpens our senses, it galvanizes us into a quick reaction. And That's not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about fear, I'm talking not about the adrenalized physiological fear response. That's really helpful. That's not going to disappear. But rather the more psychological and emotional as well, but predominantly psychological way we latch on to some sense of threat, danger, worry, and then we turn around that perceived danger, however real or unreal it might be. We turn around that sense of threat and build it up, and we stay in relationship with something that's not actually happening, right? A danger that's not presenting itself right now, a threat that's projected or imagined. And we generate, then that's the psychological part. We go around and around it, and then we generate emotional distress, unease, insecurity, etc. And some of us might recognize, oh yeah, I can get into a bit of that sometimes. And for some of us, it may feel like a very primary kind of mechanism, a primary place we go to when we feel deficient. There are different flavors of deficiency. So there's a kind of needy deficiency, restless deficiency, narcissistic, kind of deficiency, pulling for attention, more schizoid deficiency, feeling like I need to withdraw and hide from people, etc., etc. And then there's a blaming deficiency, when I try to make other people be wrong or bad so as to try and make myself feel better, etc. There's self-critical deficiency, etc. And fear is one form of deficiency. We collapse into a fearful state. And we might do that around the big things of life. Fear around decisions, fear about our relationships, fear about our financial stability, fear about our health, etc., etc., etc. Or we might do that just about little sort of insignificant things, but we make them bigger. And if we to look at fear a little bit, and we will look at it in different ways this week, just for a few minutes at the beginning of each session. But my question this morning to you might be, what are you really afraid of? What are you really afraid of? And don't be too quick to answer, because it's a deep question. And the answer, if we really let it in, contemplate it, the answer might be quite different than what we might expect. What am I really afraid of? And where do you look for that answer? Don't look to the abstract. Look more directly. It seems to me that often what we're mostly afraid of is ourselves. I'm afraid of being with my restlessness, or I'm afraid of being with my grief, or I'm afraid of being with something. And I think, oh no, I can't be with this, I can't be with this, and therefore I lean out, lean away in different directions, lean away into different habits and distractions. And of course, meditation is very much that which invites us to be with ourselves. It's very much where fear can transform into fearlessness, through not persuading ourselves, but through actually sustaining, ongoingly, steadily, repetitively coming to our experience, staying through the layers of fear, agitation, distress, complaint, judgment, blame, staying enough so that we can actually genuinely see there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. So those two reflections, I think, are very powerful. Firstly, to really consider, to contemplate, what am I really afraid of? And then to let in and to consider the possibility that maybe actually there's nothing to be afraid of. So you might find some objection or argument with that idea that there's nothing to be afraid of. If you do, well, there'll be a little time after meditation when you can argue with me if you like, or engage a little with some discussion. But for now, let's sit in meditation together. And I'll give a little orientation as we sit to this, coming to ourselves, making space for what's here. So take your seat. Let your attention arrive in your posture and the direct feel of being here. Letting your attention seep into the aliveness in your cells, into the sensations of breathing, into the directness and intimacy and simplicity of sitting here like this. Bringing our attention into just the feel of sitting here, into breath and body. We might notice just the small expressions of fear, small contractions, some reluctance to just settle and soften, some familiar habitual restlessness that tells us somehow there must be some other moment, some other place, some other situation. And just to see if you can keep leaving that aside. Just keep settling and softening into sitting and breathing. Just like this. Relaxation counters fear. Just letting your body sink a little more, settle a little more, soften a little more. And settling, gently reorientating your attention when you notice you've gotten caught up in thought. Just coming back again into breath and body, into cultivating a sense of presence that's gentle, relaxed, intimate. One thing you can do to compensate for fear is to just open your chest a little more. Just roll your shoulders back a little. And that quality of receptivity, openness, undefendedness, that sense that whatever arises here is somehow welcome. Sometimes that quality can have to it the taste of fearlessness, opening beyond fear, softening beyond fear, seeing or finding nothing to fear. If you notice anything that arises that's agitating, fear-inducing, anxiety-causing, then give special attention to the way the out-breath is a kind of very natural, gentle relaxation. It's like an invitation to let that thought form dissolve. As we relax into breathing, as you relax your musculature, as you relax into presence, and you start to relax your grip on thought forms. in addition to relaxing on the out breath. See if you can really enjoy the in breath without forcing or changing it in any way. Just see if you can find some pleasure in the gentle swelling of the lungs, the energizing of the cells, the inflationary sense, the expansive sense of the in breath, life-giving breath. Expanding in breath, revealing a consciousness that's fundamentally spacious, that has room for this breath. The natural relaxation of the out breath. The act of letting go. Sitting, settling, softening.
Presence dissolves fear. Tenderness, forgiveness, metta dissolves fear. Steadiness, dissolves fear. Kindness dissolves fear. Non-judgment dissolves fear. Remaining few minutes of the sitting. It might be a moment to let the question I asked at the beginning just seep a little into your contemplation. What am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of? and also to contemplate the possibility that maybe there's nothing to fear. No circumstance, no event, no situation, nothing we need to be afraid of. May we really face our fear. May we embrace and explore and be tender with fear. May we know a life that is fearless, free from fear. All right. So that was meditation. Here's a little time for exploring, particularly around fear, and that mostly means the mechanism of fear, the patterning of fear, the paradoxical attraction to fear, the way we might identify with fear or identify with being fearful, etc. And you can write questions in the chat box. You could try raising your hand and coming on screen if you like. That's a little temperamental sometimes. And while you're composing questions or reflecting in that way, let me just give the quick daily mention about Sangha Live and what a great organisation it is, and how fortunate we all are, really, that there's people working on our behalf, really, my behalf and your behalf, to make teachings and practices available, to communicate with everybody, to fix the troubles with the website, to do the coding and the programming and the corresponding to produce graphics and descriptions and all of that, so we can just show up and hang out and meditate together. Wow. And the only income, the only way Sangha Life maintains itself is through your dana, which is quite radical and amazing, really. It's just people like us, people like you, making mostly quite small donations. And sometimes one can feel, oh well, I can't afford much, and I might only give a few euros. But your few euros are important, actually, because it's the fact of many people caring enough to give a few euros that actually allows this to keep happening. So if everybody just thought, oh, my few euros don't make a difference, then there wouldn't be the thousands of euros that we need every month just to pay the basic expenses and keep things going. So I just mentioned that as a way of thanking you in advance for the dana offerings you might make, the donations you might feel moved to offer. And you can just do that at sangha.live/donate. There it is. George just put the link there. So thank you in advance. All right. Faith has raised her hand, apparently. So that's good. Can you manage to bring Faith on screen, George? And while you're doing that, let me see what else is there in the questions. Fear I didn't realize. Blake says, the fear I didn't realize that I'm not enough. Yes, that being not enough is the reason that things have been difficult, and it's actually not true. Beautiful, beautiful. So what's coming up for me at this time is my fear of being left out, fear of abandonment, of being lost. All right, we'll come back to the written questions. Meanwhile, hello, Faith.
Hey, Martin.
Hey.
Hey, nice to see you. Yeah, you too. So I'm having knee surgery tomorrow. And yeah, since I signed that, you have to, before you go in for surgery, you have to sign a form about all the risks. My mind has latched onto this idea that I'm going to wake up in the middle, that the anesthetic's not going to work. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel the surgeon drilling through my bone. So I've not, I don't have a lot of experience with these kind of graphic fears like this. My fears are often more kind of thought streams, feelings. And so this very movie imagery is quite new for me, and very it's hard for me to be with. It just keeps coming up. And when I ask myself that question of what am I actually afraid of? And you were talking about presence, fear in presence creates fearlessness. The fear is actually that the presence, that I don't have enough presence to be with a certain kind of situation.
Yeah, I'm wondering as I listen to you if the surgery is sort of representative of a lack of control. Fear, it's a very vulnerable thing, surgery. I mean, there's not much more lack of control than being put under general anesthetic, right? I mean, really, you're any agency is gone.
Yeah.
And I wonder just if that idea of lack of control has associations or resonances beyond just the surgery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there might be, I would say, part of it you might give attention to because it's alive right now. Part of it's just that reflecting, what is it about lack of control? Some earlier life situations, maybe where control was taken away from you or relinquished in whatever way, and that caused some kind of difficulty or unsafety or something. So that's part of it. You're just joining up the dots, and it's actually not so much, because of course the risks, as much as possible, the actual surgical risks are managed, right? You'll have a skilled anesthetician, etc. So, it doesn't do any good to just think about the anesthetic and the drill. And we know that, but you keep going back to it because it's actually related to something else, like lack of control. So that's one part, just to kind of give attention to that, so that rather than obsessing about the drill and the anesthetic, keep shifting to, oh yeah, it's actually about, I'm nervous about being vulnerable, or I'm nervous about the sense of the unknown, whatever that is. And then the other part of it is, if that feels too much in a moment, to actively take your attention to something that feels safe, that feels reassuring, that feels trustworthy. It might be the view of the mountains outside your window, you know, just because I know that you've got mountains outside your window. Or it might be a piece of music that's soothing.
Yeah.
Or it might be you just coming down from the kind of anxiety areas in your body, chest, and down into something a bit more simple, the legs, feet, etc. And so when there's steadiness, you can give some attention to, this sense of what the fear's about beyond just the surgery, lack of control, etc. And then, but if it's too much and you can't do that, then important to just to do that reorientating to that, which is reassuring. And the other support is that there's a few hundred people here who are now sending you metta and wishing you well. And so you've got all kinds of blessings going with you into the surgery.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everyone, as well.
Yeah. Wishing you well. All right. Good. And good to see that somebody can come on screen quite fluidly and easily like that, because it's been a bit temperamental sometimes. All right, let me go back to the written questions. Lisa, I live in fear of the death of my partner, as I will have no one left, no one to ask how I am if I'm ill, no one to visit me, no one to talk to. How can I live fearlessly in a life of aloneness? Oh, so I feel for you in that, Lisa, in the way that fear shows up like that. And it needs a lot of tenderness, right, because of the nature of that. And yet there's also a lot of assumptions in there. The assumption that I'll have no one left. Whoa, how can you be certain of that? And what can you do about that? So rather than just the thought, I'll have no one left, what might you orientate towards in terms of cultivating relationships, friendships? One way, I don't know your age or your living situation, etc., but one way of doing that is to see how you can lend support to others. Lending support to others, ways in which you might be able to accompany others, in your current situation while your partner is alive and is here. And say, how can you lend support so that you feel like you're part of a network of support? Very helpful, right? Feeling like, it has a genuine effect of the more one feels one's able to support others and is part of a network of support, the more one starts to feel and trust the wish from others to support oneself as well. And of course, the other, again, I don't know your situation or your partner's situation or their health situation, but whatever the situation is, just to be wary of the assumption that your partner is going to die first and that you'll be left and you'll be left to live alone, etc. Even if your partner is ill or is much older than you or something else, there's no guarantees about what order people are going to die in. So sometimes just recognizing, this fear is driven by a lot of assumptions that are actually quite unknown or groundless. It's the assumption that I'll have no one left, the assumption that my partner will die first. Worth just zooming out a little, holding those assumptions lightly and loosely. Because they are just that, they're assumptions, they're not the truth, that the fear makes them into these kind of powerful, strong certainties. Yeah. All right. Joss says, a fear that came up is the fear of our greed and destruction in the face of our beautiful planet and all the creatures on it. Yeah. So it's an important point, Joss. There's many things we might be deeply concerned about. or that we might even use the language of fear. We say, I'm terribly afraid for the state of the world. I'm terribly afraid for the forests and oceans. I'm terribly afraid for the future of humanity. I'm terribly afraid about what we're doing to, you know, air and oceans, and etc., etc. And that's actually very sane, right, and sensitive to lend our concern in that direction. But when I'm talking about fear in the way we are today, fear, like I say, is the psychological and emotional vortex in which it ends up being all about me. Fear is inherently self-centered. So it might be helpful just to distinguish between the concern for greed and destruction of planet and creatures, right? The concern for that, the wish to do something about that, the seeing how one can respond in the face of that, what organizations one feels moved to donate to if you have that opportunity, ways in which you might make some kind of tangible expression in your own life, etc., etc. All of that important. And then where does that concern and wish to engage, where does it constellate into an actual knot of anxiety and papancha, is the Buddhist word, proliferation of thought and ideas? Because that bit is about me. Even though we're saying, oh, I'm afraid for them, or I'm afraid about that, if we trace it back, if it constellates into a knot of anxiety and agitation, which we call fear, then there's a way in which we're making it about me. And that's an important distinction. So when we talk about living without fear, not living about, as if, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong. No, there's plenty of things, plenty of things that are, not to be ignored and need responding to. And yet, that way we can respond to those things without constellating into our own vortex of distress. Jane, there's lots of questions about fear. We might not get through them all today, but hey, we can tomorrow, next day. Hold on, I've lost the questions a bit in the flow of the chat. Are we? Oops, the chat keeps moving. Oh, thank you. Thank you, George. It's highlighted the question so it stops moving. Jane says, I feel my biggest fear might be being afraid. Fearing fear seems to magnify it. How to hold this? So it's one of those things, isn't it? People say, what is it? The biggest fear is fear. The fear of fear. I don't know really what that means. There's some saying about the fear of fear. The biggest fear is the fear of fear itself or something. It just sounds very complicated to me. Just don't have to worry about I would say, never mind fear of fear. Just what's important is the phenomenology of fear. In the end, we could say it doesn't much matter what we're afraid of. We could say I'm afraid of death, or I'm afraid of pain, or I'm afraid of fear, or I'm afraid of loneliness, or I'm afraid of rejection. Okay. But all the things we say or think of or recognize that we're afraid of are less significant than the caring attention that we're able to give to fear. Right? And that involves some of the things we said in the meditation. Presence, helpful, right? Kindness, like we were exploring with faith. When one's losing one's resource, don't let yourself get overwhelmed by fear. Reorientate before you get overwhelmed to something that's soothing, etc. So if you feel like your biggest fear is the fear of being afraid, well, it's like learn how to navigate that territory. Learn how to reorientate your attention to, right now, in this moment. Right? There's probably many moments in your day where you can check out and find that you're basically safe. You've got clothing, shelter, I've got food. Okay, and then just letting yourself take that in. The more you can orientate to finding a sense of ease, trust, simplicity in this moment, the more that becomes like the center of gravity for you. And the more that's our center of gravity, the less we spin out into fear. Yeah. All right, friends. So that was our morning. I'm not sure. There may have been more questions that I didn't get to down there. But if you have a question that didn't get answered this morning, please just come back tomorrow, and we'll look then. So here's wishing you a presenceful day, a gentle day, a day of really accompanying your heart. And if what you find as the contents of your heart is fear in some moments, then may what we've explored today be a support for meeting that skillfully. Thank you. Thank you. See you tomorrow.